What is up, guys? Delboy here. Hope you guys are all doing very well. I wanted to put a question out there to my fellow UK boxing fans. As we are all aware, on December the 22nd, we will have two pay-per-views in one night, both running simultaneously. One promoted by Frank Warren and the other promoted by Eddie Hearn. And I wanted to ask the question and find out what card you will be supporting and purchasing. That's of course if you purchase either one. Maybe you may go down the streaming route, who knows. But yeah, I wanted to ask you guys the question. What are you going to do on December the 22nd? Me personally, I much prefer the Josh Warrington versus Carl Framton card for a few reasons really. The main event, in my opinion, is a lot better. Number one, it is a world title fight. Number two, Carl Framton, you know, he's a well-known name. He's a two-weight world champion. He's fought good competition throughout his career. He's been in there with Leo Santa Cruz twice, Scott Quigg, Kiko Martinez twice, Nonito Donaire. Carl Framton has fought a high level of competition and he's a two-weight world champion, a genuine world-class fighter. And Josh Warrington, he's come through the ranks the right way, through British, Commonwealth, European and world level. He made himself mandatory for the IBF featherweight title that was held by Lee Selby. He went into that fight as an underdog and he upset the odds and beat Lee Selby comfortably. He proved that night he had good credentials and he was a good fighter. For me, the Warrington-Framton fight just has more quality to it, to be quite honest. And I think stylistically the fight will gel well. Framton is more of an explosive fighter. He likes to counter, sharp shots, whereas Warrington comes forward with a jab, high guard, likes to grind you down. You know, I think that fight is going to gel really, really well. A high volume guy like Warrington, I think, could give Carl Framton issues, as we saw with Santa Cruz in both fights, but I also feel Warrington's style coming forward will give Framton a lot of opportunities to land his power shots. So I think that fight just has more quality to it for a start, but stylistically it should also gel quite well. And I think it's a better fight than Dillian Whyte versus Chisora 2. For me, Whyte versus Chisora 2, I don't think that is a pay-per-view headliner, to be quite honest. I think it's very weak. I think it's a great co-main event. I think it's a great regular Sky Sports fight night. But a pay-per-view? If you said a year ago when Chisora got beat by Caballel, he would headline a pay-per-view a year later, you know, you'd be laughed at. Chisora should not be headlining a pay-per-view. It's just that simple. And again, I'm not saying Whyte versus Chisora 2 is a bad fight, because I don't think it is, but I just don't think it's pay-per-view worthy. And the overwhelming feeling I get with Whyte versus Chisora 2 is just that it was the safe option. I don't think Chisora is, the most dangerous guy Whyte could have fought. I mean, we've been sold for months that Dillian Whyte wants to fight Deontay Wilder. Well, in that case, fight Luis Ortiz. And I know that fight would not have been a final eliminator, but it gets you that one step closer to that fight. You know, if you're that hell-bent on wanting to fight Wilder, fight Ortiz. It's a better fight than Chisora. You know, I would have paid for that, no problem at all. That's a great fight. But no, we get Whyte versus Chisora 2. It's just not for me, I've got to be honest. Again, I will watch it the next day on YouTube. I don't think it's a bad fight at all. But, yeah, I'm not feeling the pay-per-view, I've got to be honest. So I think Warrington versus Framton is a better main event. In regards to the undercard of both shows, it looks like the BT card has kind of been finalised. Maybe one or two additions. But the Matchroom card, it doesn't look like it's finished yet. But from what I can see so far, I mean, even the undercard on the BT Sports show is better. So we have Mark Heffron versus Liam Williams for the British middleweight title. I really, really like that fight, I've got to be honest. Heffron has been a guy who has been highly rated in the trade in the UK for years now. 21-0, he's a puncher, and he's been waiting to make that step up. Liam Williams is a good domestic fighter. gave Liam Smith 2 really hard fights. Liam Williams himself was a British champion at light middleweight. You know, Liam Williams is a good boxer, so that's a good test for Mark Heffron. I think that's a really, really good fight. I'm looking forward to seeing Heffron on a bigger stage. You have Nathan Gorman versus Alex Leapai. Again, not the best step-up fight in the world, but I don't think it's terrible for a 22-year-old heavyweight. I think that's a good learning fight for Gorman. Gorman should win, but, you know, Leapai does have power. He has real power. Listen to what Kevin Johnson said about Leapai's power and say that's not risky for a young prospect. You also have Martin Murray on the card. He is fighting Hassan N'Dam. I think that's a really good fight. Both of these guys have been hanging around the middleweight division for quite some time. They are both at a similar level, you know, above European level, but maybe just below world level, kind of like fringe contenders. Both guys have usually came up short at the highest level. You know, Martin Murray, he's lost to the likes of Gennady Golovkin, Sergio Martinez in what was a robbery to many people, Arthur Abraham, George Groves. You know, Murray has mixed it at a higher level and has always put up a good account of himself. And likewise for Hassan N'Dam. So Hassan N'Dam, he's lost to the likes of Peter Quillin back in the day. Also lost to David Lemieux and Ryota Murata. But even in defeat, N'Dam usually puts up a really, really good account of himself. He's a good mover. He can punch. You know, I think Murray versus N'Dam is a good fight. Mainly because of where they are in their careers respectively. So both guys are one loss away from basically being irrelevant. The winner of this fight can go on to maybe challenge for a title one more time. But the loser, in my opinion, really is done. Also on this BT card you have Michael Conlan versus Jason Cunningham. Obviously Michael Conlan was a really good amateur. He doesn't really impress me that much in the pros, and I'm not really interested in that fight, but I'm sure the Irish contingent will be. So yeah, overall I think that card has decent depth to it. There's a couple of good fights on there that really interest me. As for the Dillian Whyte versus Chisora 2 undercard, you have Christopher Rosales versus Charlie Edwards. Christopher Rosales is going to be defending his WBC flyweight title. I think Rosales is a good fighter. I am a fan of his. You know, I liked the way he went to Japan and beat Daigo Higa, who was a champion who was very highly thought of. A lot of people felt Higa would go a long way in the sport, but Rosales upset him, and he then beat Paddy Barnes in August. I think Rosales is a good pressure fighter, and I'm pleased to see him on a bigger bill, to be quite honest. As I said, he is fighting Charlie Edwards. I've got to be honest, I think Rosales is a horrible style matchup for Charlie Edwards. We saw Charlie Edwards in his last world title fight against Casemiro, and he really struggled with the pace, power and pressure of Casemiro. I know Casemiro is a different fighter, but he brings some similar attributes and problems that Rosales will also bring. I question whether Edwards will keep Rosales at bay. Edwards does have good boxing skills, he's got a nice jab, he can move, but he doesn't really have that pop on his punches. Rosales is a power puncher for that weight class, and I think Edwards will get ground down, to be quite honest. Again, has Edwards had the right fights leading into this fight? He was chucked in at the deep end against Casemiro, and we saw what happened. He got bashed up that night. That could have been a lot worse than it was. You know, that could have really hindered his career. And he's come back from that Casemiro fight, but he's only really fought at domestic level. He's beat Ian Butcher and he's beaten Anthony Nelson. You know, those guys are not going to prepare you for world level. So I've got to be honest, I make Rosales a big favourite here. I'm not sure Charlie Edwards is ready for Rosales, to be quite honest. But that's an okay fight. It is a world title fight, and we get to see Rosales, who is a very entertaining fighter. I'm a fan of his, so yeah, I'm glad he is fighting. So it's an okay fight, I guess. The other fight that has been announced for that card is Ryan Walsh versus Reece Bellotti. That is for the British featherweight title. That's held by Ryan Walsh. I actually think that should be a good domestic tear-up. I think Ryan Walsh is a good British level fighter. He's a good British champion. He's got solid boxing skills. He can punch a bit. And Bellotti is a come-forward fighter who can also punch a bit, likes to work the body, aggressive. That's a good fight. Ryan Walsh versus Reece Bellotti. That could be a tear-up. In fact, that should be a tear-up. I can't see that being a dull fight, so that's a good fight now. But they are the only 2 fights announced for the Whyte Chisora 2 undercard. I know the card hasn't been finalised yet, so it's harsh to judge it. But, you know, we're less than 4 weeks out now. I cannot see us getting a stacked undercard, put it that way. So, for my money, I think the main event is better on BT. And I think the BT card as a whole is better. Again, I've got to give Sky a chance to finalise their undercard. But, again, I cannot see it being stacked. So, I think BT will have my money that night. Share your thoughts below. How are you going to spend your hard-earned money on the 22nd of December, if at all? Share your thoughts below. Peace.